Elon Musk, like, we need to X him.
We all know it needs to be done, right? If I do it, are y'all gonna convict me?
I'll write you some letters of the naughty sort.
How many times do I have to tell these influencers? If you're gonna do crime, don't brag about it on the internet. We're gonna break down the latest unhinged TikTok discourse and so much more on today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast, my daily show where I take on the craziest ideas from across our politics, our media, and the internet, all from an independent perspective. Up first, like I mentioned, we gotta head over to the Clock app because I've been following this pretty disturbing trend for several weeks now of influencers and TikTok users just openly posting about their desire to see physical harm come to political leaders like Donald Trump and Elon Musk. And some of them have officially crossed a line in my book and may now even face legal consequences because they ran their mouth on the internet about doing crime. Here's this first woman who posted this very unhinged video about Elon Musk and is now going viral and having her life blown up because of it.
Elon Musk, like, we need to X him, and by X I mean formerly known as assassination. You don't have enough people to even investigate me at this point. I haven't filed my taxes in like 8 years, and yet no one's covered me. So I'm gonna fucking say it. Let's assassinate some motherfuckers.
Hey, so this is actually unhinged, and you need to seek help. It's not normal to wish death or assassination on people because you disagree with them, and it may even be a crime. Like, you are almost certainly going to get a knock on your door from the Secret Service. And guys, listen, I hate taxes. I pay my taxes. I think people should pay their taxes because it's not worth the legal trouble, but I can understand why somebody would want to not pay taxes. But if you're going to do tax fraud, a legit crime that you can go to jail for many years for, it is probably best to not brag about it on the internet. Are y'all that dumb? Are you just that used to no accountability or consequences for your actions whatsoever that you're going to go on TikTok and confess to committing crimes for 8 years and think, what could happen? What's the worst that could happen? You could go to jail, love, and you probably will now. This is the funny part of this story, that after this was shared all over X, U.S. Attorney Ed Martin shared it and said, "Duly noted, thanks for letting us know. We'll put you in the system. Talk soon, ma'am. Hashtag no one is above the law." So this is not looking good for our friend here. She messed around, and I think she's about to find out, which honestly I'm okay with because there is a line, and calling for people to be killed is on the other side of that line as far as I'm concerned, especially on an app like TikTok that literally censors me if I say that non-binary isn't a real identity or something offensive like that. But these types of people can pop off like this. And look, there's so many videos like this. There's been a whole disturbing trend on TikTok that I'm going to show you where people keep saying, is someone going to do it? Just do it. You all know what we mean. Do it. Will someone do it? And they're all basically talking about assassinating Trump and just not saying those keywords out loud, like this woman was dumb enough to. I'm going to show you some of those videos after a quick message from today's sponsor. Eating healthy is a challenge for me, but I'm determined to feel better and take charge of my health in 2025. That's why I'm excited to share today's sponsor, Lumen. Lumen is an amazing tool that helped me feel better in my body, increase my energy levels, and maintain a healthy weight. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath, and on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workouts, sleep, and even stress management. Then, Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. How cool is that? So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/Brad to get 20% off your Lumen. That is LUMEN.me/Brad me/Brad, B-R-A-D, for 20% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. And now back to today's show. So like I mentioned, there have been videos getting tens of thousands of likes and hundreds of thousands of views on this app where people are openly egging each other on to try to kill Trump. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not making this up. I'm not like being hyperbolic to spin it up into more of a story. Take a look for yourself. Listen to this. This is just a few of the videos I found.
This is for the person out there who's planning on doing it. You know, the thing that we all wake up every day hoping we'll see in the news. And we're like, man, no one's done it yet. Keep going. Your plan, it's gonna work. If not, it'll inspire the next person. And we are all rooting for you. You have our support. You have our admiration. We might make a national holiday out of you. And I will definitely put money on your books. And if you're into this sort of thing, I'll write you some letters of the naughty sort, should you find yourself behind bars for it. But we're all rooting for you and hoping that you do it quickly and get away with it. Power to the people.
Look at me right here. We all know it needs to be done, right? If I do it, are y'all going to convict me? Because somebody got to do it.
So can someone just do it? Can someone just do it? Just do it.
Every day that I wake up, I just hope someone takes one for the team. Just go out in a blaze of glory. We will always keep money on your book. We will write you letters every day. We'll put your face on prayer candles, build statues of you.
It's giving demonic and unhinged. What is wrong with these people? This is so insane. Just to open up this app and record yourself and hit upload, openly saying like, hey, somebody should probably kill the president. That is so violent and so crazy. And it is so bizarre to hear them say power to the people. You mean the people that voted for Trump? He literally won the popular vote. So y'all say you care about democracy and power to the people, then he gets to be president for 4 years. And y'all can try again to run against Republicans, to put up a different candidate. That is totally your right, but nobody has the right to commit political violence against the people they disagree with in this country. We settle our differences with ballots, not bullets. And y'all are really, I don't think you understand what dangerous territory you're getting yourself into, especially when this is not just some abstract hypothetical. He faced 2 attempts on his life, and y'all still are saying this. That is so irresponsible and so reckless, because it only takes one sick person out there to see one of these videos and try to do it for something terrible to happen. And it would also, these people are so, they're not just immoral, they're incredibly short-sighted, and they have no idea how politics works. If, God forbid, and I would never wish this on Trump, I would never wish it on Joe Biden, anybody, God forbid somebody did kill him during his term. You know what would happen? J.D. Vance would become president, who is, if anything, probably to the right of Trump on a whole host of issues, and we would probably see a huge upswell in support and sympathy for Republicans and the MAGA movement, because Americans don't like political violence, actually, and in fact, when people tried to assassinate Trump during the campaign, it ended up redounding massively to his political benefit. So even just from a raw, self-interested point of view, these people don't know what they're talking about. They haven't thought ahead. They're just blinded by bloodlust and hatred. And that is, I don't care what your politics are. If you find yourself being overcome with hatred for the other side, that is going to cloud your ability to think critically and logically and actually make moral choices and advocate for moral things. These people are broken. They are sick. But one of the things that gets me is I don't think they're that much of a minority. They're definitely not the majority, but there is a significant constituency online and among young people who really has been radicalized. And I think part of the reason you see this sentiment, and this is why alarmist rhetoric is so dangerous and so harmful, is that they believe things about Trump, for example, or Republicans more broadly, that aren't true. They hear Democrats saying Trump is going to bring back segregation or take away women's right to vote or other lies that are just objectively not true, and they believe them. They hear progressives say that he is a Nazi president and is going to cause another Holocaust or some of this unhinged rhetoric, and they believe them. And that's how they end up in this radical place. It's still on them ultimately, because they should have much more discernment and wisdom and not fall for propaganda and fear-mongering. But people at some point need to take accountability that the hyperbole and the rhetoric and the alarmism has consequences, and it leads your audience to a dangerous and deranged place. So I put some of the blame for this unhinged attitude that is at least a little bit widespread online and among young people. I put some of the blame back on progressive mainstream figures who would never say this kind of thing openly, but will foment the alarmism and hysteria that takes people down this dark path. What do you guys think? Are you even surprised at this point by this kind of content and sentiment being so widespread? Let me know in the comments. I do take the time to read the comments and I always love hearing what you guys have to say. Do hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. Up next, the meltdown and fallout over the cancellation of Joy Reid's show over on MSNBC continues, and it is glorious. There are no other words. I'm sorry. I typically try not to revel in people's downfall, but she's just such a uniquely toxic and hateful figure and has been so dishonest. I mean, she even, by the way, spread conspiracy theories about the assassination attempts on Trump's life. She has just been the perfect epitomization of everything that's wrong with mainstream media. And now the response to her cancellation is further proving why mainstream media is such a mess in the first place. So remember, Joy Reid is the woman who loves to mock white people's tears. Well, she did a podcast interview or something like that where she talked about the cancellation of her show, and she brought out some tears of her own.
My show had value, and that that what I was doing had value. And in the end, I try not to cry on TV. And this is kind of like me on TV, so I apologize.
I'm sorry, y'all, but these tears are delicious. It is so funny to me. I do feel a little bit bad because I'm sure she has staff who will be out of work and other stuff, but you can't be so nasty towards other people and make fun of their suffering and their sadness and their white tears and then expect people to have sympathy for you at some point. Like, the sympathy is going to run out. And I'm sure her show did have a lot of value to her in that she got to yap about whatever she wanted, had this big platform, and certainly made millions of dollars during her time at MSNBC. But it did not have much value at all to the public because her ratings were abysmal and she was constantly a source of embarrassment for the network MSNBC and just a kind of embarrassment for progressivism more broadly, because she would say the most unhinged things that then people on the right would highlight and criticize and would cause scandals and kerfuffles for the network. So the value is not valuing for me, at least. I mean, I'm not really seeing this. I'm sure whatever show they put in place, and they've announced who will be in the time slot now. I'll go over that in a minute. But whatever show props up there will be similarly left-wing, will probably have similar ratings, but just probably will be a little less crazy and cause fewer scandals for the network. But apparently, guys, this is all just racism. Seriously, that's what many people are taking away from Joy Reid's cancellation, that she's being canceled because she's a black woman. And even liberal networks like MSNBC are just so racist and evil. I could show you like tons of progressive commentators and lefties who are pushing this narrative online, but I actually am going to show you something even more remarkable. Rachel Maddow, one of the stars of MSNBC, went on air and said, basically, she didn't say it outright, but she implied it very heavily, that her own network is racist for firing Joy Reid. Take a listen to this.
Where Joy Reid's show, The Readout, ended tonight. And Joy is not taking a different job in the network. She is leaving the network altogether. And that is very, very, very hard to take. I am 51 years old. I have been gainfully employed since I was 12. And I have had so many different kinds of jobs, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. But in all of the jobs I have had, in all of the years I have been alive, there is no colleague for whom I have had more affection and more respect than Joy Reid. I love everything about her. I have learned so much from her. I have so much more to learn from her. I do not want to lose her as a colleague here at MSNBC. And personally, I think it is a bad mistake to let her walk out the door. It is not my call, and I understand that, but that's what I think. I will tell you, it is also unnerving to see that on a network where we've got two, count them, two non-white hosts in primetime, both of our non-white hosts in primetime are losing their shows, as is Katie Fang on the weekend. And that feels worse than bad, no matter who replaces them. That feels indefensible, and I do not defend it.
It's the audacity for me. If I was an MSNBC executive, Rachel Maddow would be instantly fired. I mean, you are paying this person tens of millions of dollars a year so she can go on air and bash you, condemn you, and call you racist. That would not fly with me. That would be an instant termination, especially because they pay this woman tens of millions. They could put somebody else up and get somewhat similar ratings and pay them a fraction of that. And it's not as if Rachel Maddow is taking some brave stand here against actual racism at the network. The whole narrative is BS. They're crying racism, but it's not about race at all. It's also like just kind of a bizarre way to look at the world, like counting up the non-white hosts versus the white hosts. Like normal people just think about, oh, are the hosts good? Are they doing a good job? Oh, is this person good? Should they be a part of the network? Should they have a primetime show? Oh, they happen to be black. Okay. Normal people don't think about race the way these woke journalists do, where they're so obsessed about it. But even if you do, you can't argue this is racism. They are replacing Joy Reid's show with a panel of 3 hosts, 2 of which are black people, a black woman and a black man. So to even suggest that this firing is about racism is so completely absurd and antithetical to reality, and really is just a weaponization. You're trying to do PR for your friend, I guess, and you don't care about throwing around fake, false racism accusations against your own employer. That is diabolical, Rachel. At the end of the day, cable television is about one thing: ratings. And Joy Reid, despite all the controversy she brought to the network with her unhinged takes and statements, did not get good viewership numbers. Her ratings weren't good. As the Daily Mail reports, amid a looming landscape of languishing cable and legacy news stations, MSNBC had their lowest rated January in history in the highly sought 25 to 54 demographic. The statistic holds importance to advertisers due to the group's spending power and the fact that it pertains to both daytime and primetime. During the hours of 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern, MSNBC barely managed an audience of 734,000, with CNN securing just 522,000. In terms of percentage, though, the figures were even more alarming. MSNBC essentially lost nearly half of its 25 to 54 audience since this time last year, continuing a 65% slide since the election. In primetime, the network's numbers are down 41% from 2024. So Joy Reid's ratings weren't good. And despite that, as somebody pointed out on Twitter, she had a staff of 30 people. So this show was probably a massive money loser for MSNBC at this point. And it is so wild, guys, to have 30 people producing a show where you do like 40 minutes of content a night between all the ad breaks and everything. It's not a full hour. I mean, what do these people do? And how crazy is it that she was dropping this level of unhinged take with a team that big, writing and helping her with all of it? That's wild to me. I mean, I honestly think I could do a show like that and produce it myself pretty easily as one-man show. It would be good, of course, to have like a couple people to help you, a booker, a producer to help you prep segments. But it is so wild to have a team of 30 and you're only reaching this few people in the key demographic that matters. Obviously, your show is not long for this world under that reality, and it has nothing to do with racism. It is sickening to see them weaponize accusations of racism like this and further dilute the meaning and credibility of those claims, hurting the people who are actual victims of racism in the cases where it is appropriate, because people in liberal media and on the left more broadly have thrown this around so lightly and overused it so much, people don't take these claims seriously anymore. And that's actually bad in the sense that it hurts real victims. But people like this do not care about that. They only care about themselves and their own careers and their own self-aggrandizement at the expense of our culture their own credibility, and so much more. I, for one, will not be shedding a single tear for Joy Reid. But what about you? Do you feel for her? Do you agree that she's just the latest victim of racism at MSNBC? Let me know in the comments, and do hit that like button while you're at it. Up next, Trump just made a big announcement that is controversial, but will impact most Americans. So a little while back, he announced 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, with I think 10% instead on energy and oil being brought in from Canada. But then he issued a 1-month pause on it as he made further negotiations with Canada and with Mexico. Well, Trump has announced that after this delay, these tariffs are going to go into effect. That means there'll be a 25% import tax on most goods coming in from Canada and from Mexico. And guys, we get a lot of things from Canada and from Mexico. Here's what Trump said yesterday at a press conference about all this.
We're on time with the tariffs, and it seems like that's moving along very rapidly. We've been mistreated very badly by many countries, not just Canada and Mexico. We've been taken advantage of. We were led by, in some cases, fools, because anybody that would sign documents like they signed, where they were able to take advantage of the American people, like has happened over the last long period of time, except for a little 4-year period that took place 4 years ago. But anybody that would agree to allow this to happen to our country should be ashamed of themselves. No, the tariffs are going forward on time, on schedule. This is an abuse that took place for many, many years. And I'm not even blaming the other countries that did this. I blame our leadership for allowing it to happen. I mean, who can blame them if they made these great deals with the United States, took advantage of the United States on manufacturing, on just about everything, every aspect that you can imagine they took advantage of. I look at some of these agreements, I'd read them at night, and I'd say, who would ever sign a thing like this? So the tariffs will go forward, yes, and we're going to make up a lot of territory. It'll be very good for our country. Our country will be extremely liquid and rich again.
So there's a couple things here. But one, the thing that's so strange to me about this clip is Trump talks about the trade agreements between the US and Canada and Mexico that he thinks are unfair, thinks ripped Americans off, and how could anyone have signed these deals? But what's strange about that is that Trump signed that deal. In 2020, he negotiated a big trade agreement to replace NAFTA that he said was like a great deal called the USMCA, and he signed it into 2020. And since then, not just we didn't have 4 years and then a different 4 years, that's been the governing trade policy between the United States and Canada and Mexico. And it's his policy that he signed into law that now he's saying is a terrible policy, and who would have ever signed that? Mr. President, I have bad news. Now, I actually thought that USMCA was fine. It was not that different from NAFTA, but broadly, allowing free trade in goods and services with our allies, with countries like Canada and Mexico, is a good thing. It helps us specialize in the areas where we can produce goods the most efficiently, and we have kind of our specialization and our strong industries, and then we can get other things from these other countries. We can access their natural resources, and economists largely agree that free trade is an economic winner. It's a net positive. There are, of course, some people who lose out, but broadly, it is a boon to job creation and to the standard of living of Americans. And honestly, if these tariffs do go into effect of about 25% on Canada and Mexico for most products, that will hurt Americans. Lots of things that we buy or rely on are either made in Canada or Mexico, or if they're made in America and assembled in America, they have parts or materials that come from Canada or Mexico. If those see a huge increase in their costs, that will be passed on to consumers, and there'll be higher prices for things, which is kind of the exact opposite of what most Trump supporters and voters voted for. They specifically were upset about high prices and inflation under Biden, and Trump is about to do something that could lead to a whole lot more of that. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense in terms of taking care of your voters and serving the country's best interests. Now, Trump, of course, thinks this will protect American businesses and workers. And the way that tariffs tend to work, it will protect some, but at the expense of others. So a great example of this is when Trump did tariffs on steel in his first term as president. It helped some workers in US steel manufacturing. It protected them from competition and they were able to preserve jobs. But many other jobs were lost, far more jobs on net in industries and manufacturing sectors where steel was an input cost and prices went up. So the net effect was actually job loss in US manufacturing. And Trump kind of admitted that these tariffs will increase prices because he's very concerned about lowering gas prices. So he specifically put a lower tariff of only 10% on energy coming in from Canada, which if tariffs didn't make things more expensive, you wouldn't do. The other very strange thing about this is that Trump also just put 10% tariffs on China. So our allies in Canada and Mexico now have a higher tariff rate than our rivals in China. To me, the math is not mathing there. If anything, if you want to decrease our reliance on China because they are an adversary and a hostile actor on the world stage, which I don't really dispute, we should be trying to trade more with Mexico and Canada and other countries that are, friends of the US in the sense of liberal democracy and all that, not punitively taxing their businesses and their imports more than we tax our rivals. That is confusing and kind of incoherent to me. Now, when I talk about tariffs increasing prices, that's something that most economists agree on, and they'll teach you in an econ course is just kind of how supply and demand works. But what I'll often hear from people is, well, Trump did tariffs in his first term and inflation was low then. Yeah, but he did pretty narrow tariffs. He did tariffs on specific industries and sectors. He didn't do, and even then, I do believe the net impact of many of those tariffs was negative. But even then, he didn't do broad-based tariffs on our allies. This is a new level of policy. Like, he's escalating significantly beyond anything he's done in the past in terms of trade policy. So it's entirely reasonable to expect different results. But what do you guys think? Do you support Trump declaring a trade war with our neighbors and allies? Let me know in the comments, and do hit that like button while you're at it. All right, guys, that's it for this episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will talk again real soon.